537 AD, the Hungry Year, Ireland's forgotten famine. The year 536 began with a silence in the skies. The sun, once blazing over Europe and the North Atlantic, dimmed to a pale disk. Chroniclers from Constantinople to China described it as if daylight itself had been stolen. For 18 months the light was weak, the warmth gone, and the seasons collapsed into a strange half-winter. In Ireland the impact was immediate and brutal. Fields that once promised barley and oats withered, pastures thinned, and hunger gnawed its way into every cottage. The annals call it simply a failure of bread. But behind those words were empty tables and starving families. And before we go further, remember, this is the kind of history they never told you in school. Stick with me. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Yahweh Stories 444, so these buried stories never fade again. What unfolded was no ordinary poor harvest. Archaeology shows abandoned homesteads, hoarded treasure buried in panic, and tree ring evidence proving a climate disaster. The oaks of Ireland grew narrow rings that year, their own wooden testimony to the sudden cold. Crops failed not just once but again in 537, prolonging famine for 2 years. Mothers stretched meager supplies of grain into thin gruel. Beer, the common drink of the Irish, became scarce when barley would not ripen. Cattle and sheep weakened, their bones found centuries later showing signs of malnutrition. Monasteries, the keepers of grain stores, tried to feed the desperate but could not save all. Where food was scarce, theft rose. Law cracked under the strain of survival. Famine invited its deadly partner, disease. Weakened bodies could not fight infection, and pestilence spread in the wake of hunger. Within decades, Europe would face the Justinian plague, but in Ireland the groundwork for suffering had already been laid by these dark years. Modern science confirms what the scribes hinted at. Ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica record enormous sulfate spikes in 536, and again in 540. Tree rings from Europe, the Americas, and Asia all narrow sharply. Together these signals point to massive volcanic eruptions, ejecting ash high into the stratosphere. Candidates include eruptions in Iceland, Central America, or even multiple volcanoes working in sequence. The result was the same. A volcanic winter that dimmed the sun and stole the summer. Ireland's famine was part of a global pattern. Procopius in Byzantium wrote that the sun shone like the moon for over a year. Cassiodorus in Italy described harvests ruined and people shivering in midsummer. In China, snow fell in summer and crops failed too. Across the world, hunger reigned. But on a small island in the Atlantic, the effects cut especially deep. How many died in Ireland is unknowable. Tens of thousands may have perished, perhaps more. Entire families vanished from the record. The famine left scars not only in bone and soil but in memory. Later annalists, writing centuries afterward, still marked 536 as a dividing line, a time when heaven itself seemed to turn against the earth. Yet even amid ruin, survival took root. Communities adapted, fishing more heavily along the coasts when crops failed inland. Some clans shifted territory, abandoning marginal lands for more fertile ground. Monasteries preserved not only food but also memory, recording the calamity in lines of ink that we can still read today. Out of hunger, resilience emerged, fragile but real. Today, the year without sun is often called the worst year to be alive. But it is also a reminder. Nature's violence can reorder human history in the space of months. For Ireland, the famine of 536-537 was a crucible of suffering, but it also tested the endurance of a people who would carry memory of darkness into their future. And that memory is why we tell the story now, because every famine, every ash-dark sky, and every survival belongs not only to the past but to us, warning, teaching, and reminding us of how fragile civilization can be. Like and subscribe to Yahweh Stories 444, because the shadows of history are worth remembering.